Honourable Pasita Sam Lotu-Iiga.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and Happy New Year to you and to all our colleagues across the chamber. And this is the first week back in Parliament, sir. And Xinyin Kuai Liu, Hunin Daji. It is Chinese New Year. The last couple of days has turned over the Chinese New Year, and tonight we celebrate that in Parliament with a function here, which I will be hosting. Sir, it is a new year, and it is another year in which this government, this John Key-led national government, continues to focus on the issues and the matters that are important to all New Zealanders. And it was interesting to hear the Speaker who just sat down, Ms King, talk about the Kiwi dream and talk about what's important to New Zealanders around education. And what is important is education and jobs, and she referred to jobs, and that's why, sir, this trade agreement, the TPPA, is such an important agreement to get signed and get implemented, sir, because we know that free trade with our partners across the globe helps to eliminate poverty, helps to raise living standards, it helps to employ people, and it helps to put clothes on children's backs, food on the table, and to look after our families, our communities, and ultimately this country. And what does it mean? Well, let's talk about the figures. In 2030, sir, it will be approximately $2.7 billion per year, and it involves 12 countries where there are over 800 million customers, potential customers, that we'll be able to sell our goods and services to. And I find it rich, sir. I find it rich that a party that used to support free trade, a party that used to support enterprise and endeavour, are now railing against jobs, railing against economic development, and railing against the types of benefits in jobs that they used to promote. And I think that shows, David Clark, that shows a lack in leadership, a lack in vision, and certainly it shows division amongst our opponents. And how do I know this? Because, you know, visiting local businesses, and I visited a business with the Prime Minister. It was a dried meat products company, and they, sir, that were talking about how increased trade with China had led to more jobs within that company. They were talking about overtime for the workers, not just after hours, but on weekends. They were talking about production runs that we're looking to expand over time. And they were talking about how this company that is based in Māngere could provide further opportunities for family members, friends and others who were prepared to apply for jobs within that company. And that only came about, sir, because of the free trade agreement with China. Now, we've heard members opposite talk about the loss in sovereignty. Well, they know, and we know, and the New Zealand public know, that the sheer nature of free trade agreements provide for some loss of sovereignty. You give up something in order to gain something else. So these agreements, by their nature, and even the ones that were signed under the Labor government, the Chinese free trade agreement, had a loss in sovereignty. And I don't get the argument now that 7 years later, or 8 years later, that this has suddenly changed. Second point that was raised by members opposite was around the lack of consultation. Well, sir, these things we know are not done in the public gaze. There is an opportunity through the select committee process for the public to have a say in these matters. Well, after it's been signed, but they have a say in these matters, sir. And you don't do negotiation in the public sphere. We all know that if we did that, we wouldn't have a negotiation, we wouldn't have an agreement, and we would have bickering amongst those members to that pact or to that agreement. And all I'll say is the proof is in the pudding on this trade agreement. All I will say is that in 2008, our two-way trade with China was less than $9 billion. Today, sir, it is over $20 billion. It's our largest trading partner. We have over 30,000... Yeah, thank you, Labor. I'll acknowledge it. Thank you, Labor. But I don't thank Labor for depriving this country of a similar trade deal with 11 other countries with over 800 million customers. I will not thank Labor for that, Mr Clark. So we're talking about 30,000 students who come here every year to get their education. We're talking about 355,000 tourists, and growing, who come here and spend money in the New Zealand economy, expanding our tourist industry, but most importantly, expanding the job base in this country. And I just have one more example to add to what trade agreements give us. In my own electorate, in Maungakeke, locally in Mount Wellington, it's a company called Waste Management. And they took a $900 million investment from Beijing Capital, which led to over 400 additional jobs for local people, for New Zealanders, where 400 families could be provided for. And I challenge members opposite to argue against that. To say to those 400 extra workers that they can't be provided for. Silence. That's all I hear from David Clark, silence. And jobs are important, sir, and last week we heard the jobs figures, 5.3% unemployment, which we're all proud of. Even the Labor Party are proud of our record on unemployment. But what I was particularly proud of, sir, was the figures around Pacific employment. Over 130,700 Pacific people are now fully employed in this country. 130,700 Pacific people employed in this country. And why is that important? That is the most Pacific people that have been employed in this country in our history. And even Carmel Sepuloni likes it. Well, thank you, Carmel Sepuloni. We appreciate your support for those figures. And what that shows is, in the last year, 14,500 extra Pacific people are now employed. And she likes that. She has an angry face, but she still likes the fact that all those families, all those people are employed. It goes alongside our education figures for Pacific. ECE rates well over 90%. And it starts in the home, it starts at early childhood, and it goes right through the education system. So Annette King asked about why it's important, and these are the facts. These are the figures that show this national government is good for all New Zealanders, but I'm particularly interested, as the Minister of Pacific Peoples, to show that the record has actually improved the well-being and the welfare of Pacific people in this country. And that's a record that we stand proud of every day. And what does it mean? The NCA Level 2 rates, not just at early childhood, but NCA Level 2 rates, have gone up 46% since National took power, 46%. That's over 5,000 Pacific people who now get NCA Level 2 or above every year. Sir, this year my focus is not just on ethnic communities and on Pacific peoples, but as Minister of Local Government, I'm looking to improve local services, improve the provision of local services by local government. I'll work alongside local governments, the mayors, and I'll work alongside the councils with some reforms that will allow them and enable them to better use their assets, better utilise local government assets in order to provide better infrastructure, especially around water, around transport, and around the provision of utilities, sir. And it's also, I'll be working alongside them to better monitor their performance, to see what works in various local governments and what doesn't work. Because we know that there's some really good work being done in local government, but we also know that with a little bit of tinkering, a little bit of tweaking of local government, we can get them working better. And I think we're all in agreement that ratepayers demand services that are effective, that are efficient, but also quality services at local government that they can use and that they can utilise. And I'll be working alongside those councils and Local Government New Zealand to better improve those services. And what does it mean? In terms of infrastructure, it's over $110 billion over the next 10 years between central and local government, the provision of infrastructure that will support jobs. So what does that mean? It means broadband outlay, it means bridges, roads, various other infrastructure projects. And I'm particularly proud that the Prime Minister announced 2 weeks ago the $1.25 billion project in the East-West Link that is in my electorate, in Maungakiekie. So, sir, this is a government that is moving forward. This is a government that is providing services to all New Zealanders.